when I was a young boy, there used to be a Kia that was someone's pet that you could go in the cage with. And this Kia, like a lot of them do, had a lot of personality. They're a lot more interesting than most parrots. And I had a pretty good bond with it. But whenever I used to leave the cage, it would cry out and wail just like a 2-year-old. And the only way you could stop it from doing that was for me to get back in the cage with it. And having that early experience with that Kia has really stuck with me through my taxidermy interest, because it's meant that I'm a lot more interested in them than I would be other birds. I think I've got 2 of them, and it's meant that I have a more overall interest in New Zealand birds as well, just because of that early experience with a Kia as a kid. The thing about taxidermy is it is quite a solitary hobby, because essentially you're competing against everyone. Even if you don't think you are competing against everyone, because everyone wants the best stuff in their collection. Everyone wants the nicest things. A lot of us are collecting the same really good things, and there's only like this 1% of stuff that is truly really good, and you're competing against these collectors. So as much as these people are your friends, some of them anyway, you do always have in the back of your mind like, oh, I hope he doesn't come to this auction today if you're there for something, or I hope he hasn't seen it and stuff like that, because we all see each other's collections, and at the end of the day it is a competition, irrelevant of what people think. Don't tell me birds are not for sale at any price. They're one of my favourite things. They need a little bit of work done to them. Like, a few of them need sort of putting back. One of the eggs has fallen out their nest, but when I've done that, if I ever get around to it, or get someone to get around to it, they'll be pretty bang on. So the Roland Ward fighting cock that I bought cost me $5,200 on the hammer, and then I paid all the expenses on top of that, so it's probably around $6,000. But I mean, I just about had the money at the time. I had to like move stuff around, but it's the best thing I own by far, and when you walk in the room it completely dominates it, and even people that aren't interested in taxidermy really like it, and they always notice it, and it's kind of a piece of British history in itself really. When I was bidding, my plan was to go up to about $4,000, but then I got like the classic auction fever, and I was bidding online as well, and I just seemed to get angrier and angrier with every click. And then like once I'd won it, it sort of set in like what I'd done, and that like basically wasn't going to be able to do anything for 2 months of my life. But then the minute I like got it home, put it on the shelf and stuff like that, it all became worth it. But it was kind of a rush of blood, but a rush of blood I'm really happy with now. What's the focus of my collection? So the focus of my collection's always been more tilted towards Roland Ward and any British historical taxidermy. Like, as you can see, I do love the Roland Ward cases, especially when they're signed on the glass. But recently I've started becoming more and more obsessed with cotingas, the South American bird family. One, because they're kind of an interesting species of bird, and 2, because it makes me really sad that the fly tyers keep ripping them up. So I'm sort of trying to rescue them in my own way and keep them, and it's quite fun having like 6 spangled cotingas if you can. What the fly tyers do is they take the bird, and there'll be specific birds, and they'll make old recipes to use in fishing lures, but I don't think they actually use them anymore. They just put them in like cabinets filed away almost, but they'll rip out the throat feathers on a lot of them, so they won't actually use the whole bird, but it'll completely wreck the bird from a taxidermy point of view. But they like to use old specimens because it keeps up with the recipes, because all the recipes are Victorian. But I do think it's quite sad, but it means that cotingas go for these monstrous prices sometimes, certain ones. So one thing I never really get with taxidermy is when people get really upset if something's been retaped. I understand we'd all like the original tape on it, but if something's falling apart and then it's been taped up again, much like some of the cases I have behind me, as long as it's been done nicely and cleverly, it doesn't really bother me. And it's something I don't really understand why it bothers others. I understand if you want the old glass, because that's a nice thing to have. It kind of shows it's original and stuff like that. But getting funny about cases being taped up by someone is a strange thing in my opinion. But then again, I have no skill to like fix the stuff up myself. So maybe if you have the skill to do it yourself and you're looking at someone who's been doing it and they're less skilled than you, I guess it could bother you. So my current girlfriend actually really likes the stuff, and she's a big fan of it. Like it doesn't bother her. She thinks it's interesting. You know, I'll bring her an old leopard head, and she thinks, oh, that's really cool. My previous girlfriend, however, hated it. Firstly, she was scared of birds, which is a massive problem because you're surrounded by them staring at you. She said that the eyes followed her around the room, so she had to go, basically. So that was sort of the end of that relationship. I think I brought my, I've got a man-eating leopard by Roland Ward in the corner, and I brought it home, and she just started bawling with tears, said she couldn't sleep with it in the room, and then we broke up about 2 months later. So the best bit of luck I've had with taxidermy was when I bought my big case of hummingbirds. There was only about 4 pictures of it on the auction website, and they were all just like zoomed close-ups of a couple of like the less good hummingbirds. And then when I bought it and turned up, there was like 70 of them in the case, and some of them are really nice, some of them are a little bit faded, but the rest of them are actually like really nice and kind of perfect. So that was the best bit of luck that I've had. And the interesting thing about that case is there's a label on the back that says they were all collected outside Rio de Janeiro in like 1880, and it's case 1 of 29, which just shows how much of this stuff was firstly produced and secondly either binned or got rid of at some point over the decades, because you never see cases like this. But to think there was once 29 matching cases of them, it's kind of sad, really. The other day, my key fell out of my pocket and then hit the dome that the capuchin's in, and I heard the like ping of the dome, and it was like behind me, and then I was like praying it hadn't cracked, span around, and it hadn't, but that's about as close as I've come. And getting that big, I had a dome with about 3 lesser birds of paradise by shore, and off the ground it was big. It was like sort of that high off the ground, and getting that home was scary because it only fit in my car by about an inch, and the whole way I was thinking if we go over a big bump and it goes up, it's gonna crack. But I just about got it home somehow. So the red bird of paradise behind me, funny story with that was when I was a kid, I was actually given that by one of my dad's friends, because can't believe I'm saying this on camera, but so basically when I was 10, I think, I was circumcised, and I was in absolute agony for like 2 weeks, and one of my dad's friends saw me and knew I always wanted that red bird of paradise in the dome, and he felt so sorry for me that he gave me it because I was in such pain. So would I say it was worth it now? I probably would, yeah. It was Ray Ching, actually, the bird painter, that gave it to me.